They're dead, Dave.
What, Captain Hollister?
Everybody's dead, Dave.
What, Todd Hunter? What, Selby? Not Jen.
He's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead. Everybody is dead, Dave.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Everybody's Dead Dave, our Red Dwarf review podcast featuring myself, Adam Martyn, and as always my co-host,
Phil Hawkins. Hello.
Hello, and we are back. We are at the end of another series. We're at the end of series 7 with episode 8, Nanarchy. And just for us recording, this is our first recording of 2022, which is very exciting.
Yes. Hope you all had a lovely Christmas. It won't be your first episode listening if you're a regular listener, because I think 2 or 3 episodes will have come out before then after Christmas. Which is good. I'm editing the episode that's coming out tomorrow now, and in it I say keep on talking about this year this, and this year that, but I'm editing it thinking, no, now it's not this year. It's last year, and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, if you're familiar with this show, if you're regular, you'll know our time jumping in terms of recording and whatnot, so no need to worry there. But yes, we're at the end of Series 7, can hardly believe it. So Nanarchy. So the plot description reads as follows. Lister tries to cope with the loss of his arm. Meanwhile, Kryten searches for his Nanobots, incredibly advanced microscopic robots which can alter forms of matter at a subatomic level. Dun dun dun. Very, very brief description there, but yeah, I guess that kind of works for the episode. If you're listening to this and you haven't listened to episode 7 and you're like, what? At that plot description, I'd maybe go back and watch that first. Otherwise, you might be very confused.
It's kind of the first time we've really had a proper, to be continued that does pick up. I mean, kind of at the end of last series to the beginning of this series.
To this one, yeah.
But really,
in the series itself.
Within the series itself, it's the first time we've had a cliffhanger that has then carried on, a to be continued, and we get Kryten going last week on Red Dwarf, and I love the way he then breaks down and something terrible happened to Mr. Lister's arm.
Yeah, he was like, oh, watch this. I was like, great, as Red Dwarf does so well, I think we've said many times, but how it sort of throws back to the classic sci-fi space adventure, and of course, you watch any of those old serials like Flash, that is it, isn't it? It's like last week on XYZ, so yeah, brilliantly handled. Also, the incidental music in this opener, in fact, I'll just say the incidental music throughout the whole episode I really like. There seems to be more of it this time around than we normally get. I don't know if you picked up on that as well.
This is a flaw in my own listening and watching of things. I don't tend to pick up on incidental music unless it's fair. Particularly something draws my attention to it, like it's particularly bombastic or something like that.
Sure,
then I notice it. But just generally, the way I just don't tend to notice incidental music most of the time, even when it's if I listened out for it, I think, hey, that's really good. But because I'm not, I just don't think about it.
Well, there is one particular bit of incidental music that really stood out to me, but we'll come to that later on. But how this kicks off is we're in the main the common room living area of Starbug, and Lister's playing guitar with the one hand he's got, whilst Kryten's giving him a hand on the other one, and This was quite an interesting opener, I thought. I mean, what did you think of opening this way? Because it's not opening with dialogue, it's literally just them strumming the guitar.
Yeah, it was quite a good visual gag, because it starts off, you see Lister's hand, doing the chords, and then it kind of zooms out a bit more. I can't remember if it zooms or tracks across, but one of the two. And then you see Kryten's hand doing the strumming. It was cleverly done. I liked it. It's probably the best Lister has played the guitar.
I was going to say, it started picking up, and you see it in their faces. Well, mainly Kryten's, he's bobbing along.
He's head banging along.
Physical comedy. Yeah. No, it was, and then obviously the payoff when they stop, and Kryten's just like, oh, sir, you sounded really good,
Well, one thing I noticed in this is that Lister says, at least now I'm only half crap. But previously, he thought he was amazing, and everyone else didn't thought that he was good. Now he seems to know he's crap.
Yeah, it's like, has he just admitted it after all this time, or is it? Yeah, I did find that as well. I was like, hang on, isn't Lister the one person of the crew who actually believes he's like a bona fide rock star or something? So yeah, that was an interesting turnaround. But after all this guitar stuff, they all get into conversations about or famous or well-known one-armed people who achieve something with their life, and they throw up quite humorous ones like Venus de Milo, and was it Lord Nelson? That was
yeah,
one,
I think so.
Yeah, Lord Nelson, and then they start to struggle, and I'm gonna open with it early, Phil, but I think the whole gag of it went on a little bit too. It just seemed to. I liked it at first, like a lot of them, like it was quite funny. But I don't know, when everyone started chipping in, and it just dragged out a bit for me. I wanted to move on to something else by that point. But
yep.
What did you think?
Yeah, it went on a little bit too long with the cat going on about Van Gogh, mistaking him for having one arm when actually, obviously, he had one ear because he cut the other one off. It went on too long. Yeah.
I find it interesting how they write Cat in this one, because obviously we know he's kind of he's a snarky guy and he's very on the nose with what he says. There's no subtlety whatsoever, which has always been like his shtick. But for me, at least, that shtick for me, it's better when it's like very quick and punchy, like some of his one-liners. I often find with Cat, and I think I saw it twice in this episode, at this point now and a bit later, where when he's really allowed to just like, when it goes on, it doesn't really land for me after that initial thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a bit later on when he's at the table and they're playing a game, and it's more played that Cat is just like, he's completely oblivious to what Dave's whole situation, and he's going on about how he says like, oh, can you imagine losing an arm? It's like, yeah, you can imagine. He's just lost his arm. And in the end, he's shouting, move. And the cat thinks he's talking about him. He needs to move rather than taking his go. That went on too long as well, I think. But also, it was a bit of a different thing for Cat. It wasn't the kind of his usual spiel. It was him just being completely oblivious to what was going on, really, and just carrying on talking regardless.
Yeah, and of course, all comedy's subjective, but I just thought the way his bits were written out and like played out for as long as they were, for me, it just didn't necessarily land quite well. But hey-ho, can't win them all. But we see that Kryten, obviously, as he has been doing, takes up the position of like really looking after Lister, even doing things that, as he said, he could probably do himself, like itch his nose or
dip in the
bicky and all that sort of stuff. Which Kochanski picks up on and has a chat with Kryten. Now, I quite like this chat between the two of them, because I think we've said in Series 7, obviously a lot of their dynamic, Kryten and Kochanski, has been this thing of, Kryten's really defensive over Lister or protective over him, and they're usually bickering or, at a point of argument. Whereas this time it felt more, Kochanski especially was trying to be really genuine with him, or trying to like, they still have like little quibbles and stuff, but I don't know. I quite like this scene.
Yeah,
really, between the two.
And they didn't have. We've been saying that they especially Kryten's jealousness about paranoia that Lister's not going to want to be friends with him anymore because Kochanski's there has been played up a bit too much in the last few episodes. But here, that didn't seem to be his motivation for anything. His motivation was that there was a little bit of a disagreement between them, and that was about what each of them thought was best in the situation for Lister. But that really annoyed. What had become really annoying. It wasn't really annoying to start with in the first episode or two that it happened in, but as it kept on repeating itself, that jealousy aspect and him going, the high pitch, like, you're gonna leave me and stuff like that to Lister.
Yeah.
That wasn't in this episode, and I really appreciated that not being here.
Yeah, I think that's what made it work. All those, like I said, all those little niggles or issues that we had with this series just weren't here this time. It was like they're actually trying to work together for a common good, I guess. And it's nice to see that. It was very nice to see that. And then it actually segues into that scene you mentioned about Cat and Lister playing a game and Cat being very on the nose. And I mean, I think we've addressed it. I think we don't mind necessarily the concept of Cat being on the nose because he's always been like that. But it just dragged out, I think, a bit. It overstayed its welcome a bit too long, for me at least. But,
yeah. I mean, he has always been insensitive. That's true. And more concerned with what's going on with him. I remember that scene back in, I think it was probably Series 1, where Lister's collapsed on the floor and Rimmer's trying to get him to come and help because at that point Rimmer couldn't touch anything.
Oh yes,
and so and it was like, come help quickly, and Cat was like stood up, and then as soon as Rimmer left, sat back down again to continue his dinner rather than going and helping. It's that same kind of self-obsessed attitude that is still here in the Cat in this scene, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me at least, I just prefer it in short bursts, or it's more effective in short bursts, rather than this. But Kryten has an idea. He thinks he can maybe try and find Lister a new arm. I couldn't remember, where did they get that one from? Did he say it wasn't one of his spares, that arm, was it? Or
no, I mean, did I catch them saying it was from the 20th century?
21st.
Oh, it was the 21st.
The early 21st century.
Yeah, so that's still a couple of centuries earlier than where they're from. It's old tech.
Old tech, that's it. And then we get this, I thought, wonderful hand pick up the ball.
Pick up the ball, sir. Pick up. Come on, you can do it. Pick up the ball.
I just loved how it just kept escalating, and Craig Charles is like grunting louder. Kryten's just going like full. I thought it was a perfect example of physical comedy, and of obviously these two are understanding their characters so well as, I thought it was great. I loved it.
Yeah, I thought where that was going was that he was going to realise at the end that he hadn't actually turned the arm on.
Oh yeah, that would have been one.
But I do like where they went with it, and then of course he tweaks the settings on it to make it more sensitive, and then Lister ends up punching him in the face.
He does, yeah. Controlled by the subconscious thought.
Yeah, there was another good line here, I thought, which was...
It's far too dangerous to let you out with that arm, sir. 2 minutes with Miss Kachansky, and who knows what you'd be swinging around your head.
With it being affected by his subconscious.
Very good on the nose Red Dwarf humour there. But even though this arm does work, even though it punches Kryten, I think they realise it can't really work properly.
I did think it was a nice... I don't know if it was deliberately referencing. Again, we mentioned it last time. The Future Echoes episode where we see a future Lister with the metal arm, with the cybernetic arm, and I did wonder if they were deliberately referencing that. I don't know, or if it was just pure coincidence.
Which, of course, if I'm remembering right, it's mentioned in the first novelization, isn't it? I think one we've read about him seeing or being an old Lister with one arm. Although I think in that book, the reason, because obviously I think that was written before Series 7. So I can't remember off the top of my head, but I just think the reason for him losing his arm is obviously different to there. I'd have to double check. I've got a vague imprint that Old Man Lister, if you like, is mentioned, robot arm and all.
Yeah.
I have to double check. But, that experiment's not really a success. They've gone back to the drawing board. And then back in the common room, it's probably, you know what I mean, the main living quarters or whatever, where they all hang out, Kachansky reveals that in her dimension, their Kryten had nanotech, basically, in which he could use to repair himself. And I thought we actually got a pretty good explanation of nanotech in quite a concise way. Because don't you find in a lot of properties that have nanotechnology, they don't really explain it. They just say, oh, look, it's this microscopic thing that can do lots of things.
Yeah.
And, do you know what I mean? I don't know. I was trying to think. I was trying to think of properties where nanotech is not, I'm not saying explained in a scientific thesis, but just, explained in more detail than they are small things that can do things.
Yeah,
I don't know. I thought this one was quite well done with the whole pencil and the diamond.
Yeah,
analogy.
with how it breaks down matter into its component atoms and reassembles them. Yeah,
that's the one,
and that's how it fixes it. Yeah.
But then they emerge. Well, before they head back into the cockpit, they emerge from. I must have missed this, or if I did, I didn't write it down in my notes. Why did they go into deep sleep again?
So because they realize that they need to go and find these nanobots, and so they try and retrace their steps and work out when was the last time that Kryten used them to repair himself, and that was just before they encountered the despair squid at the end of series 5. I want to say 5.
I think so, yeah.
So they head back there, but that is... Because, of course, after Series 5, they went into deep sleep when they lost Red Dwarf to try and find Red Dwarf. So that's who knows how long it takes them to get there, 100, 200, 300 years, something like that.
Sure.
So they've gone back into that and they've gone to sleep for 300 years. to get back there.
I must have just missed that line, because then they came out and I was like, wait, what? What's happened?
Yeah, and as always, I love a nice reference back to a previous episode. So the fact that they're referencing the Esperanzo ship where the Despair Squid was and all that sort of stuff, and losing Red Dwarf, loved all that.
Yeah, speaking of Red Dwarf, when they're in the cockpit, Kryten picks up a planetoid signal, which he can't believe because apparently it claims the planetoid is Red Dwarf.
Yes.
And I wrote, have they found it after? Because when did they lose it? Was it the end of series?
Yeah, so they had it at the last episode of series 5, and by the time the first episode of series 6 started, they'd lost it. So and it was basically
it's been 2 series.
Yeah, as they basically left that planet we saw at the end of series 5 with the Despair Squid, and never found Red Dwarf again.
Yeah, until now potentially.
Well, yeah. I did like the fact that they're detecting this planet as Red Dwarf, which they say is ridiculous. But that's one thing I didn't realize. There was a recurring joke about the sensors malfunctioning, and I think Kachanski goes,
"Of course, it's on the blink. We're talking about the same piece of equipment that last month detected a planet entirely populated by air hostesses."
We spent 2 weeks checking that out.
I knew we gave up too soon. It was worth at least one more week.
Nice bit of 90s 90s attitude.
Yeah, but then when they go down to this planet as well, they scan the planet for its climate, and I didn't notice this the first time I rewatched it, because I rewatched it twice recently, and I only clocked the second time, so I think it was a very underplayed joke. But then Kachanski goes, "Oh, the scanners say that it's sunny, clear weather, so we'd better take the snow outfits and the buggy, because the scanners are..." And I only clocked this time. It's like, oh yeah, because the scanners are always wrong.
The scanners always on the blink.
So and lo and behold, it was horrendous
it's a nice little
snowstorm
gag.
type thing.
I did hear her say it at first. I was like, wait, what? And then, like you say, I was like, oh yeah, because the scanner's just a bit rubbish, really. I mean, to be fair, after all Starbug's been through, the indestructible Starbug, I'm surprised the thing's still running. Never mind the scanner. But they do go on the surface in their buggy, and Kat goes out to explore the surface. And I really like this little two-hander bit with Lister, and particularly when it's like him fumbling about with the sweet.
Yeah.
Because I just think, even though, yes, it is played, most of it is played for laughs, like when he drops it and gets it stuck on his head. But for me, it's that bit before he drops it, when he's trying to just, get it out the wrapper. Because, you can't hear the audience laughing, and there's not really, it's not played as a joke. Because I guess, I was trying to think, if you did suddenly lose a limb unexpectedly, you would probably struggle to even get used to, the simpler things, I suppose. I don't know, I thought it was just played really well.
Yeah, and Lister is sort of struggling with the concept that he thinks women won't find him attractive now he's got one less arm, so he's trying to...
First thought.
Yeah, so he's like, will anybody want me? Will you want me, basically, is what he's thinking there, because she's the last woman left alive, so he's
and
kind
she
of...
puts him down quite...
She puts him down,
quite
but then I really like
yeah.
the bit where he then, I can't remember what he says, but he mentions sex, and she goes, "Not here, it's too sandy."
Yep, straight away, almost.
Yeah,
away.
but I like that, because it was kind of like she was there was no way she wasn't gonna, and that wasn't the only reason, but it was just like a nice little throw in joke, just to make him sort of cheer up a little bit.
No, for sure, it was a good guy. I mean, that for the most part, this one's been good on the little two-hander scenes, like I say, this one and the one we mentioned earlier with Kryten and Kachanski. I just think, as I've said before, obviously Red Dwarf is a comedy show first and foremost, but I do like it when they take even just little moments to let their characters have, I guess, a pseudo-serious conversation. Do you know what I mean? Where it's not all played for laughs. It's nice to break it up. Like we always say, it's like the good old viewing deck chats between Lister and Rimmer back in the old days. But Kat encourages them to go out and pick up some stuff, and they bring a haul back. And at first, it seems like they haven't really got many useful things at all, really, just bits of junk.
Yeah, but they do confirm that the planet is Red Dwarf.
They do,
and that the Nanobots has converted Red Dwarf or some of Red Dwarf into this planet, and just discarded the bits they didn't want on the planet's surface.
One of which is a risk communicator in which there's Holly.
Holly!
Norman Lovett Holly as well.
Norman Lovett is back.
All right, dudes.
I literally said, I was like, Holly, like Norman Lovett Holly, and of course with his like, what's he say? How's it going, dudes, or something like that.
All right, dudes.
All right, dudes. Yeah. Oh, it's great to see because we haven't seen. It was at the end of series 2, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's the last time we saw Norman Lovett. Yeah.
Hey. I mean, I'm in two minds now because when I was watching these last like 10 minutes, I was so happy to see because I like Norman Lovett and he's really good. And then afterwards, I was like, oh, but I also miss Hattie Haybridge.
Yeah.
And now I'm in two minds as to like who I want to see.
Yeah, because you've got Norman, who is the original, and then you got Hattie, who had done more seasons.
She's done more.
She'd done 3 seasons.
Three seasons.
He had done 2. But his delivery on stuff is just on point still in this episode, just as it was back in those. It's like not missed a beat. It's so good to have him back.
He's straight back on form. I wrote like them instantly, like taking the mick out of Kryten. I was like, yeah, this is Holly.
Yeah,
back on form,
I've recently discovered I have one of those weird 7 degrees of separation to Norman Lovett things. So hold on, let me try and get this right. So my best friend, her mum, current partner's, ex-wife's brother,
right,
is Norman Lovett.
Oh,
I think that's right. I think I got that all right.
Yeah, okay.
I might,
So
if I possibly missed a step, it was definitely something like that.
Yeah. That's cool though.
Yeah.
Man. That's nice to know you're loosely connected.
Yeah, it just came up when I was randomly round theirs at Christmas, and I was talking to the guy whose ex-wife is Norman. I think Norman Lovett's sister. He definitely said Norman Lovett was his brother-in-law, so it could be his sister, or it could be his brother's or his sister's. I don't know, something like that. Anyway, and I just mentioned the podcast, and he was like, "Oh yeah," I was like, "Wow, okay,
small bloody world,
what a
eh?
small world."
No, it is great to see him back, and but they quickly deduce that the nanobots using their particle detector could actually be on Starbug and have been in Starbug this whole time, or for a long time at least, anyway. And where are they found? In Lister's laundry basket.
Exploring the world of the microscopic world of Lister's laundry basket.
Yes. I'm glad we didn't get to see that as an audience. That might have been a bit, even past the watershed, that might have been a little bit too much, perhaps.
How they capture them though is just such ridiculous visual humor. I mean, there's no
great,
like high tech
no
constructing force fields to try and like locate them or whatever like that. It's literally just Kryten grabs a jar and rustles around in the thing and then like pulls the jar up and puts a lid on it. It's like, have I got them? No, you haven't.
I wonder if that was deliberate or if that was for like budget reasons. They were like, look, we haven't got, because to be fair, in this there's a lot of CGI at the beginning. There's some model stuff with the buggy, and obviously all the arm stuff. So part of me thinks like, did they just run out of budget and they were like, they're nano size, we can literally just pretend.
Yeah,
or
I mean, this is funny. It could be either way. It could be planned just because it's funny. But sometimes budget restrictions lead to funnier stuff anyway. So,
but you're right. The physical comedy though, from when Robert Llewellyn's just like diving about in the basket, is great. But they do trap them, and to communicate with them, again, great physical comedy, is Kryten just needlessly tapping the jar as hard as he can, and that somehow, we don't really know, but that somehow gets them to bend to his will, seemingly.
Yeah. And then he's going to use them. The other thing they want these nano things, I can't remember if we mentioned this earlier. The other thing they're looking for this nano things for is to fix the arm. Did we mention that earlier? I can't remember if we did.
I don't think we did, but yes, that's what
basically to rebuild a flesh and blood arm for using other, spare bits of flesh and blood on Lister. And so the next scene where he comes in and he's like, the nanobots on my finger. Now all we need to do is insert them into you. And then the worry on Lister's face at that point is like, how are you going to insert them?
And a hypodermic.
It's hypodermic, of course.
No, great gag. Very, crude but funny. And I noticed he used his middle finger as well, which I don't know, that just made me laugh even more. I'm not, because he's just holding it up to him. I'm like, oh, that's good. So the nanobots get to work. We get a nice little crossfade, and they've given him a new arm, but it's It's not quite what.
Not just a new arm; he's got a whole new body.
Yes, one in which he doesn't seem too happy with.
No, he's turned into a bodybuilder by the looks of it, quite muscly.
Well, I was confused at first because obviously everyone does there's a reaction with Kryten, Kochanski and Kat.
Yeah.
And then it pans over and I was like, okay, so at first I couldn't tell, maybe it was my eyes or the distance. I was like, oh, they've made him buff because I could see like the veins in his arm and stuff. And then, but they're all like, oh my God, like we shouldn't, like we need to and I don't know, maybe it's just, I would have assumed, because, you know, Dave's all about like, especially with women, like you said, like impressing women and stuff. So I would have thought the revelation that he's quite buff would actually be quite like a good thing.
True.
But instead, all we get in this episode is he just screams. He's like, oh, maybe it's just shock in general. I mean, it is quite a difference.
Yeah.
Like,
the only thing I wondered was whether, because the way that the nanobots are meant to work is that it breaks down molecular structures and uses them and reforms them into other matter. So they have to have the matter to take away from somewhere to put into something else. Yeah. So, what did they take away? Is what I'm wondering. And maybe that's why he screamed.
Oh, I see.
But so as well as making him buff, maybe they removed something, and that was what we were meant to get
quite
from that. I've got to admit, that idea occurred to me right at the very end of that scene, and I did not rewind it to check and look out, let's just say, size of any bulges or lack of. So,
but no, that could be what
it was.
I suppose we'll have to wait for Series 8. Well, you might remember, but I'll have to wait till Series 8 till...
Let us know in the comments if you have an opinion on this.
Yes. But then back in the cockpit, Kat's driving, and sure enough, we see Red Dwarf. And I've got to say, Phil, we get the old Red Dwarf theme.
So good.
I genuinely got chills down my...
Yes.
I love that theme, and I'm so glad they busted it out for this, because it's been forever.
It has.
Like, we haven't heard that.
It was so good just hearing that slow,
that little jingle. And the shot I loved as well, like the small star bug just in like and then the size of Red Dwarf.
Yeah.
But then as Kat flies into Red Dwarf, he makes the comment that the ship seems a bit bigger than he thought. And sure enough, when he pulls into the landing bay, there is a star bug there. A star bug that is about 100 times bigger than them. And he goes, we've got a problem. And then the episode ends. And I thought it was quite a solid ending. Good gag to end with. And I wrote, because we know what Red Dwarf's like, I was like, is this a pseudo cliffhanger for Series 8? Or as in, are we going to start Series 8 and this is still the thing? They're in a Red Dwarf that's a giant. Or is it going to be one of those Red Dwarf things where they end it and you think, oh, that could be a cliffhanger, and then they just start the next series like, oh yeah, forget it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because we've had that before. I think Series 2 to 3 was the most famous example. That was I think where Lister was about to give birth, and then we get the famous 100 times Star Wars crawl. So yeah.
Well, I won't give it away for you. Because,
no, of course.
Obviously, you're watching these for the first time, and I've watched them before, so I know what's going to happen. But
well, let's put it this way: if it does turn out to be we've just fixed this now, I would not be surprised in the slightest. But it could be a pseudo cliffhanger, like it could be. Because I don't know, you might know more than me. This was done in 1997. And I've looked that the Series 8 wasn't until 1999. So I don't know when they filmed this, if they knew they were going to do a Series 8 for sure, or if it was still undecided. Because I guess Series 7, if you think about that ending, like they found Red Dwarf, and if that could be it, I guess. A bit of a weird ending with the gag, but I guess you could say they found Red Dwarf, so the quest is over sort of thing. Like if that was the end. So... No, I'd be curious to know if by the end of that, or when they filmed it, if they knew they had another series, commissioned or whatever, or if they didn't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the commissioning aspect of it was. I just know that it wasn't as much of a weight as it. I mean, it was a little bit of a weight, but not as much of a weight as between the last two series. So,
yes. Well, that takes us to the end of Series 7. So we've only got one more of the quote-unquote original run left then in Series 8. But before we get to Series 8, we've got to do our regular features. So who was your favourite character in this one, Phil?
It's got to be Holly, I think.
The return of Holly.
It's got to be him. It's so good to see him back, and to hear his sort of his delivery on stuff is great, and it's really good.
Great to have him. He came close, but I'm going to give this one to Kryten.
Okay.
The physical comedy. I mean, he usually is, but this, like, especially the hand pick up the ball and the searching the laundry basket, I just thought it was fantastic. But Holly definitely inched it. It was I was debating in my head, but no, I'm going to give it to Kryten for this one. What about your funniest moment? Was that a Holly moment too?
It wasn't actually. I mean, it could have been. I mean, I was tempted to put All Right Dudes just there as it, but that might be my favourite moment of the episode, but it wasn't necessarily a funny moment. Like, it was more of a kind of punch the air, hey, Holly's back type moment. So it doesn't quite fit the same criteria. I did really like the line about when you can't control the arm and it's being controlled by subconscious, it can't let you out like that. 2 minutes around Miss Kachansky and who knows what you'll be swinging around. That did get a laugh out of me. So I think I'm going to go for that one.
Solid. Yeah, good gag. For me, it's just, it's the whole hand pick up the ball bit.
That's right, sir. Now keep going. Now really think. Now, hand, pick up the ball. Now let's really get it going, sir. Pick up the ball. Hand, pick up the ball. Really start to go now, sir. Hand, pick up the ball. Now let's keep going. Keep going, sir. You can do it. Hand, pick up the ball. You're going to move that hand, sir. You're going to move it. Move that hand, sir. Hand, pick up the ball. Pick up the ball. Yes, sir. Yes. We've got some movement, sir. Yes. The finger is moving. Keep going. Yes. Oh, bravo, sir.
I couldn't stop giggling. It started off as like a low giggle that then became like just full on laughter, the more ridiculous and silly. And it's a perfect example of, you watch, and it is quite silly, but the way it's done in that way where you're on board with it, you're not cringing at it.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
And I think the fact that both of our things happen in the same scene means that was a very good scene overall.
Yeah, probably arguably the best scene of the episode, but that's all subjective. And finally, how many scutters out of 10 would you give the Series 7 finale film?
Would I give this? I'm going to give it an 8.5.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What about yourself?
What? I'd give it an 8 myself. Okay. That's what my gut's saying. Where does your rating lose the 1.5?
It's not that it loses it for anything. It's not like there's a sin that it commits that I go, oh, it's losing marks for that. But it doesn't quite hit the highs of the comedy in some areas that, like, yes, it's got that great scene with the arm and a few other nice, and it on the comedy side, and it has a bit of everything. It has the nice quiet moments between characters. It has the kind of like really exciting moments like Holly coming back. It does have little bits of everything, which is why it's still a high. I'm still rating it quite high, I think.
Yeah.
But it's just not quite like, oh my god, this is amazing at every moment.
Yeah, mine's similar to yours, I think. Just that, again, the comedy doesn't hit. Some scenes elongated, arguably unnecessarily, like the Cat and Lister one, or little things like that. But there's a lot to like. And before we just close off this episode, what have your how was for you then? Obviously, because you've watched Series 7 before, how has this one held up for you as on this rewatch?
Mixed. I think the stuff which still had Rimmer in was the strongest bit of the season. And I did feel his absence when he wasn't there, I think. And then we had episodes like Duck Soup, which weren't the greatest. But there has been good in there. I mean, these last two episodes have been strong. They're just not. Yeah. Just because 8 and 8.5 is good score. It's not like we're saying they're not enjoyable and not fun. So it's been a bit mixed. I'm trying to think. I still think of it quite fondly this season, I think.
Yeah. Oh, fabulous. Just curious because obviously, opinions change over time, and I'd just be curious to see what your
because I would have been, when was this, 1997, so I would have been about 12 when this came out, and I remember really liking this when it first came out.
25 years ago.
God, yeah.
Sorry. I just figured out the number in my head. I was like, oh god.
So old.
But yes, yeah, giving your age away there.
Yeah,
not age, just a number. No, I've really enjoyed this one on the whole as a first timer. I think, as I said, I preferred the more. I know we said at the start they wanted to go with more like a movie approach with some of the set pieces, and it seems like for the first 2 or 3 episodes they definitely did do that, like with Ticket to Ride and Smoke Me a Clipper. But to me at least, it seems that motif has trailed off a little bit as the season, whether that was down to like, budget or whatever. So I think I'd say I like the first half or the first few bits of the season more than I did maybe the latter parts. But yeah, on the whole, still a good season. Probably not my favourite Red Dwarf season so far, but I'd revisit certain episodes is what I'd say. Yeah. Probably. I don't know if I'd revisit everything.
No, and even within some episodes like Blue going into Blue, my overriding memory of it was just the song at the end. Yes, and I still absolutely love that song. But the rest of the episode wasn't quite as strong as I remembered, and basically I was just remembering the song. So
yeah. Good song though. What a song to remember. So can't complain. Well, folks, that is it. That's the end of Series 7. So make sure you join us over the next few weeks where we'll be going into Series 8. And then obviously after that, we'll be moving into what I believe is known as the Dave era to you aficionados there.
And we might do a few specials in between as well, just to pad it out a little bit.
Just to make you wait a little bit longer.
Yeah, we got some books to talk about. We got some.
Certainly do.
We got an American Pilot to watch. We're going to be doing a few other things. We might also do a Q&A. So, hey, if you want to start leaving questions for a Q&A in the comments down below, we'll collect them all over the next series, over Series 8.
Please do.
And then after Series 8 is done, you can ask us all our opinions on Red Dwarf so far.
Yes. Let us know. And let us know.
You can ask us anything, really.
And other things too. But before we go, Phil, where can the good people find you on the internet?
The best place to find me is my YouTube channel. Currently, it's just my name, Philip Hawkins, 1L in Philip. There I talk about all sorts of pop culture that I like, enjoy and consume, things like this. This podcast goes up there. And things like Doctor Who and the MCU and Star Trek. Sometimes Power Rangers. We've been having just before we started recording today. We were having a very in-depth conversation because we're both Power Ranger fans.
We are.
So, anything pop culture that I like, you can find on there.
Wonderful.
What about yourself?
For myself, just Adam Martyn, again, just my name on YouTube. That's Martyn with a Y. Like Phil, I sort of talk about various bits of pop culture, Doctor Who, now that's what I call music, some TV history, just, whatever I fancy, really, whatever I feel like splurging onto the internet on that particular day. You can follow me on Twitter as well, at Adam Martyn AMTV, and you can also follow this podcast on Twitter, at All Dead Dave Pod. Follow us there for updates on the show, guest announcements, some memes as well. Who doesn't love a good bit of memes? And follow us on there. And also, and don't worry, I remembered, we also have some merch out as well for the podcast. So I believe if you go on there's a link in the description to our store where you can go and check that out, and you can buy, there's mugs, there's t-shirts,
I think hoodie,
yep,
and a face mask. Very topical for today's time. Stay safe, everybody.
Absolutely, stay safe. And I mean, you won't be able to see it 'cause it's audio only. Phil very kindly got me one of the mugs for Christmas. And it is a good quality mug. It's not one of those. I hate those. Brief tangent. You get those mugs where they're printed really cheaply, where you can see the outline of where the printed thing. Where if you just use your finger, you could probably just peel it. Do you know what I mean? This isn't like that. I can't see where the outline is at all. Do you know what I mean? It's good. So head over to that. It's again, link is in the description. If you're listening on, you'll be in the Spotify one as well, won't it? I'm sure.
Yeah, maybe. I don't.
Or if not, head over to YouTube.
It's definitely in the YouTube description. So head over to there and have a look.
You'll be able to find it. Don't you worry. But yeah, in the meantime, then, thank you very much for listening, and you can join us next week as we start Series 8. But until then, bye bye.
Bye bye.